I considered doing a more actual review of the Rise of the Tomb Raider, but after thinking just how many times I'd have to say, like it wasn't Tomb Raider 2013, it got me thinking about what would be a better topic to talk about because of the Rise of the Tomb Raider. And I figured it out. And I want to put it in a nice way because the game is nicely done and adequate. It's not bad, but well, Rise of the Tomb Raider might be the most unnecessary game I've ever played. Not just because it's almost exactly the same game but with new coat of paint as the previous one, but also because I can't really tell why someone would wish to play it. It might not be the same for everyone, but I always search for something special in games, something that will grab your attention, be it a good mechanic, cool story, fun sequence, amazing gameplay in general, unique feel, or something else. I might not even like the game in the end, even if it's good, because it's not what I enjoy, but I'll remember and admire it for what it tried to do or did. And that's what I focus in my video reviews usually. And previous games in Tomb Raider series that I really like by the way, all had this something. Some had more of something, some had less of it, but they all, even the 2013 reboot, did try something special. And I can't find a single thing about Rise of the Tomb Raider that will be that something. It has many things that will make you feel fine playing it, but not a single one that will make you want to play it. Tomb Raider games were always known for their acrobatic adventuring, essentially being Prince of Persia in 3D, but still good. As in Prince of Persia, the acrobatic platforming and puzzles were the key, combat was less emphasized, and all of that was tied with some rather basic story that gives you a strong motivation to move on and do stuff, but doesn't really get in the way of playing too much. In addition, it was all about visiting some amazing legendary locations in the world in unexpected ways, playing with some childish dreams of crawling and climbing across mythical ruins of old. Now, the balance of the series wasn't always set in stone. Some tried to lead more on the story in usually unsuccessful ways, either due to it not being particularly good but serious, like Tomb Raider 2013, or due to most of it being cut, like in Angel of Darkness. Some tried to be more of an action title, like Tomb Raider 2 or most notably Legend, that seems like a clear predecessor to Uncharted, released a year later. And my personal favorite, The Last Revelations, sometimes had a bit too many stretches of just puzzles and platforming that could become tedious. But every game tried to make something interesting with these core concepts. And that was the magic of it. You'd play the entire game just because of those core, no pun on core design intended, concepts alone. Start Lara's mansion, learn everything you need to know about the game in about 5 minutes, and then spend 20 plus hours seeing how these 5-minute core knowledge expands and evolves in different ways. Because you see, the classic Tomb Raider titles had platform as actually challenging use of set mechanics, not just slow vertical movement with some actiony scenes to spice things up visually, but barely in any way mechanically. Don't get me wrong, I'm not against context-based controls and animations, nor am I against simplification of controls and mechanics for the sake of more fun. But there's a point at which simplified mechanics turn into pointless busy work, holding a button down while many animations play on screen and you barely have any control of it. Let me explain what I mean here. Here in the Lara's Mansion from the very first game you can see how controls work.
Okay, let's do some tumbling. Press the jump button. Now press it again and quickly press one of the directions and I'll jump that way. With the walk button down, I won't fall off even if you try to make it. If a jump is too far for me, I can grab the ledge and save myself from a nasty fall. Walk to the edge with the white line until I won't go any further. Then press jump immediately, followed by forward, and while I'm in the air, press and hold the action button. Press forward and I'll climb up. If I do a running jump, I can walk to the edge with the white line until I stop. Then let go of walk and tap backwards to give me a run up. Press forward and almost immediately press and hold the jump button. I won't actually jump until the last minute. Try to vault up here. Press forward. I can't climb up because the gap is too small. But press right and I'll shimmy sideways until there is room. Then press forward. Tap backwards and I'll jump off backwards. Immediately press and hold the action button and I'll grab the ledge on the way down.
And as I've mentioned before, it was just like classic Prince of Persia, but in 3D. It still have tile-based distance that is easy to judge by the eye, still have standing and running jumps, still have walk button to not fall off, still have fall damage, and even slightly different set of controls for when you take out your weapon. Although that was much less limiting in Tomb Raider, where you could do insane acrobatics while shooting and still be able to grab things if you hide weapons fast enough. So all this means that whenever you see a jump of 2 square titles, you know that you need to have a running jump and then hold an action button to grab onto the ledge. You know that it takes 1 jump back distance to have a running jump to work. You'd know that every surface that is less than about 40 degrees sloped can be stood on and less than about 20 degrees can be grabbed on from the side. And every move you make will be based upon these tiny calculations you make in your head. This can be simplified and still remain fun, however, as a lot of Crystal Dynamics Tomb Raider is shown, not all the time, as some context-sensitive jumps or restrictions just didn't make sense, but going back a bit to earlier projects that I absolutely love, like Gex Enter the Gecko or Special Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver and later entries in this series, had platforming that felt like a smart use of abilities that you have and distances you calculate, but at the same time remained mostly consistent, but had some of the context-sensitive stuff. Tomb Raider 2013 and Rise of the Tomb Raider lack any pretense for any mechanical consistency, however. Places you can jump to can be jumped to only when the game allows you to do so, with Lara simply bouncing back off open and half-open passages she can climb into until later when the game decides that you can now do this. Jump distance for Lara can go all over the place depending on what cutscene will decide the result of the jump will be, with most bad jumps being due to the fact that you somehow didn't trigger this cutscene jumps correctly, or because you assumed that the jump that was clearly possible will connect, but it's actually programmed not to. And why was the option to have some ledges always have extra action button press in the game? And yes, it's not actually a random chance, some ledges will simply always trigger this additional hand slip animation no matter how many times in a row you do it. Which is exactly what I mean by saying pointless busy work. You don't solve any platforming puzzle in this game or the predecessor, instead you just follow the only route available to you, but vertically and slowly, adding nothing and engaging no one. Oh, and the good example of pointlessness in it would also be a classic swan dive, that in the classics was triggered by simply holding walk while jumping, but in this game requires a very, and I mean very precise button press at a specific point of the jump, while serving absolutely no practical mechanical reason whatsoever. It's just hard to do, because. So then, perhaps it's not platforming that's scoring the new titles, perhaps it's the action that the game decides to focus upon. And in a lot of ways it is. But whenever the game focuses on something, you'd expect it to be good and fun. And Rise of the Tomb Raider misses the point here too. While it's a bit toned down compared to the ridiculous amount of shootouts in Tomb Raider 2013 that functioned exactly the same, however, and while it tries to position itself as a more of a stealth and action game, it doesn't do either in an entertaining way.
We're under fire!
Stealth is just basic and often looks hilarious as you just brutally stab a person with an ice pick while they're horribly screaming just a few meters away from a person that doesn't notice anything. But the big example of why it's not good lies in the only stealth scene in the game which could be fun. At the very end of the game, there's a sequence where you hunt enemies from beneath the ice water in a room full of smoke, which could lead to a fun and tense sequence, if not for the fact that by that time you can stay underwater infinitely, and enemies can do absolutely nothing to you while you're in there, while standing dangerously close to the opening from which you can drag them into the water, while people around can, again, do absolutely nothing. Even in Batman Arkham games' most overpowering Batman moments, game often try to add some tension elements to make you, go faster or riskier, than you'd otherwise go. And the pure shooty bang bang action is just dull. It's strange how much action there is in the game, and yet how tame it is compared to both classic core design and Crystal Dynamics' previous trilogy. You just grab cover and shoot. And if you try to play the game as most recent cover-based games try to do, by, motivating you to constantly run around and melee people and do stuff like that, it looks and feels awkward, with Lara crab walking around the place and trying to stick to any surface. While Uncharted titles took the core elements from what Legends was going for and then shaped the controls and set pieces into something that works best specifically for action, as shown here in a fantastic Chip and Ironicus Let's Play of Uncharted 4, Tomb Raider went fully backwards and made combat dull, clunky, and not interesting. And scripted in funny ways too, by the way, so not just jumps are context sensitive. Here I can hit the final boss with melee no matter how many times and no matter how much blood is flying out of his head, it leads to nothing, because the only way to kill him is to trigger a cutscene. Why even have the ability to smack him in the face with sharp pickaxes if he mechanically has no health and can only die via a cutscene trigger? The world may never know. As with the story, on which I don't really want to spend much time on, but it would be enough to say that it's pretty terribly written and manages to sound and look even more stupid than the early titles, mostly due to how serious it takes itself for no reason. So I doubt that the story would be the thing that you'd be interested either. Even the part about exploring interesting places is missing in the game. There are a few visually interesting and usually optional puzzle rooms, some of which I have to admit, while simple, were at least engaging and even creative at times. But most of the time it's just you're in a snowy or less snowy forest, and now you're in a decommissioned Soviet base, with even the mythical city parts not being particularly awe-inspiring. I mean, the game is technologically advanced and looks pretty and all, but it just doesn't compare to so many more technologically simplistic areas from earlier games that just had you go, whoa, what an amazing place. You just look at things, think, okay, and move on. And that is the game in general. That's why I feel it's one of the most unnecessary games I've ever experienced. It's nicely made, pretty looking game made by skilled veterans that you might pick up, play, think, okay, and move on without ever thinking about it again. Even outside the amazing pedigree of the series, Rise of the Tomb Raider is just there, a game that might as well be a slightly interactive or even completely non-interactive movie and be better at it. Hell, maybe then the plot would have been given more attention and quality and would have been a nice popcorn munching dumb thing to watch. But it's a 20+ hour game, and there are really so many other things you can do with 20 hours that are so much better.